Courageous love now. Courageous love now. Courageous love now. Welcome back. Welcome for the first time, all of you beautiful people who are tuning in right now. This is Lara Helena, Courageous Lara of Courageous Love Now. I'm so happy that you've passed by and decided to drop in and have a listen. Today, I would like to share part 2 of my 3 parts of an ayahuasca journey I did back in May. I shared on my last episode part 1 of my first night and that really amazing experience of dissolving paradigms and really finding this inner courage to go to the other side of me, of the illusion of it. So in this episode, you will hear about my second day, my second ayahuasca experience, but also some other plant medicines that I partook in. So to begin, I'd like to just invite you, if you haven't heard episode part 1 of my ayahuasca journey, that would be episode, dear me, it's Inner Courage, Dissolving Paradigms, My Ayahuasca Journey, which is the episode right before this. So, in tailing on, the next day I woke up quite early because I had also made the decision on my first day that I would partake in the use of Kambo, which is a medicine that is used to help cleanse and detox the body. So it helps to clear out the lymph system of the body and to help to detox the liver and the organs and whatnot. So I had actually done 1 day of a Kambo journey about 1.5 years ago, and I never completed the other 2. And you're supposed to do 3 within a moon cycle. So I had made the decision on the first day, after hearing more about their process and how this group was using Kambo, and that it wasn't exactly the way of the original traditional way, which meant that there wasn't going to be as much purging. So I had decided, because I had purged quite a lot on my first time of doing Kambo, that this was not for me. And now I decided to change my mind and give it a try. So I arrived as one of a handful that wanted to do Kambo in the morning, and prepared myself to do this amazing plant medicine. It is actually off of a neurotoxin off the back of a frog from the Amazon forest that they scrape off of. They don't harm the frog when they do it, and they turn it into a powder form, which is then put into your skin through, they just do a little, like almost like an incense burn, very slight burn on your skin, and they turn this powder into kind of a type of paste, and they put it onto your skin, and it absorbs right into your lymph system. The experience lasts probably about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the intensity and also your system. And so I started my second day of this ayahuasca retreat with the medicine of Kambo. It was very powerful. I had remembered the first time that I had almost passed out and they had to pour some water on my face. They said that it is quite normal that this can happen. It's almost like your body is resetting itself. I also do have low blood pressure, so it's often something that happens to me in different types of medicines and treatments that I've had done. So I went through a period of where you feel the heat. You could kind of say you can feel it going into your system. So it almost like your skin, right under the first layer of your skin, is really intense heat. Once it's kind of spread itself through your body and it hits the area where it needs to do the most work, and then you will start to feel maybe some cramping, burning, pain, etc., in the area where it is doing the most work. So for me, my first day, um, the work was quite solar plexus and just below, like my organs and solar plexus area, my chest. Kind of, I would say, kind of heart chakra area, honestly, between heart chakra and my solar plexus. Very intense heat, breath, flushing with sweat, and this lasted for some minutes. I drank a little bit of water. I was requested to drink about 8 ounces of water before we started. I didn't purge at all. This cramping lasted for, I would say probably a good third of my experience. So the first third was the oncoming of the heat, the sweats, the awareness of the body, temperature rising, etc., and then the cramping. And then the last third, it shifted into what I would say kind of almost euphoric. So it's almost like the medicine is pushing through, whether it's the energy center or it's literal organs or the lymph system, whatever the blockage is, or the healing that needs to occur, the medicine is going straight to that area. So as I felt the shift and a massive relief, I was vocalizing, some crying, some moaning, etc. And then there was a shift into a type of euphoria, this feeling of really going into a place of, at least for me, it was like a spiritual elevation. I just kind of went up, right up through the center of my chest, into my head and out the top of my head. And I had some visions, I had euphoria, I had tears, elation, and the whole thing lasted, I would say, probably 30 minutes. And then the facilitator is there to help you to lie down and rest and allow these transitions to acclimate in your body. So this was my morning of day 2 of my ayahuasca retreat. It was quite profound, as all of these journeys have been, as I've been really embracing opening up to them, embracing accepting whatever it has to show me, being a humble student of the learning that my body intelligence, the intelligence of this earth medicine, I would call it, has to show me. So I then had a few hours before we would meet for the integration of our first night, and potential other plant medicines that would be used. So I went to my room and rested, and returned back at the time that we were meeting for our integration gathering. Now, again, this was the first morning that everyone was sharing. I won't go into the details of what was shared because it's private about different people, but the biggest shift for me, at least in my own process of sharing, came through reflections that I got from other people sharing their testimonies, and the realization that all of us shared deep healing and received deep healing through the ayahuasca journey the night before. Now, if you have listened to part 1, you heard that this paradigm shift that I went through of kind of surrendering myself to my imagination, to the unknown, and truly arriving at a place of that surrender. So diving into this first day of recognizing why I was coming to this retreat, what I was there to work on, I was feeling a lot of that come through in other people's testimonies of their experience of the night before. And I did have to say, I did have some comparison as to what they lived and what I lived and what my intentions were for the weekend, around working on clearing some big pathways of my programming, my control matrix, etc. And there was a person who shared before me around his relationship with his not accepting who he is and his not living up to the expectations of what his father wanted him to be, and. the facilitator asked if there was anyone else in the room that felt and resonated with what he said. A handful of people raised their hands, and I raised mine very quickly, because she had asked him if he saw himself in his father. And right away, he had a big emotion of fear that came up and said, I can't acknowledge that. It's too painful for me. And what came up for me was that there was a lot of my father that I was acknowledging and have been acknowledging in myself over the course of this last year. The aspects of the shadow and the aspects of the light. But I would say the aspect that I truly was there at the retreat to delve deeper into was that of my anger, my fear, and control. And this dance between them, and this fear of my own anger, and recognizing that throughout most of my life I have been dancing in the garden with the fairies and following the light and the glitter and the magic, the unicorns and the dolphins and the angels, so to speak. And the true work of me going into shadow has been few and far between. And I would say I spiritually hijacked myself from doing a lot of the work because there was so much pain there. And I was afraid of facing it because I was afraid of my own shadow. And what I have come to learn was that the shadow and the light are one and the same. Now, this has been a couple months now since I've done this retreat, so I've taken a lot of time to process and reflect on it. But there I was in my second day after my first night and listening to this and acknowledging that I too had fear of recognizing my father in me, because he was not a nice person. He was a very angry and volatile and narcissistic person. And with that, I shared my own experience of that reflection with the group in the integration. And that my acknowledgement of my journey of my night one in breaking down paradigms and coming to the other side of a certain control that had been over me of perfectionism and a certain way of living and being, that shift into the surrender allowed me to feel aspects of myself that I was held behind bars from my own control. So here I am now in this sharing process and in the witness of seeing another person break down around what they were afraid of, and I saw myself in them. Because truly, what I was afraid of was facing my biggest fears. And what was my biggest fears? One of them being that I could be like my father, a narcissist, volatile, angry, aggressive, power-mongering human being. Now, that's not the only side of my father. He has a lot of other sides that I have looked up to and have leaned towards because I wanted to see the light in him. It was very hard for me to see the shadow in him and accept the shadow in him because I wanted to believe that he was good. And what I recognize now is all that shadow was inside me. Part of it was my own, part of it was his that I took on. So, my day 2 of my ayahuasca journey led me into a pathway of reflection and contemplation around this area of anger and shadow and darkness inside me. And that a lot of my fear and control in life was built up around the construct of me not wanting to embrace or express or show that I could be angry, that I had anger inside me, that I had ugliness and shadow inside me, because I wanted so much to be pure and clean and clear and golden and Christ-like. so to speak. So I finished this integration session. It's about 2 hours. And at the end of it, as many other people shared, we were then invited, if we wanted to take part in the plant medicine called Bufo, Bufo. Now, those of you who want to look up online what that is, you certainly can. It also comes from a toad. And this is a medicine that comes from the glands in the neck of a toad. And it is the derivative of DMT. I don't have the chemical name for that memorized, so I'm not even going to try, but a lot of you, I'm sure, know what DMT and you've heard about it. So I'll let you look up Bufo for yourself to do more research. So I understood what it was, and the main facilitator shared that this medicine was a medicine that could bring the receiver into the closest place of being completely dissolved of a physical 3D consciousness. That consciousness, our singular consciousness, is dissolved into the great consciousness. It's the most unifying medicine that anyone could ever try. So the way she explained it was pretty mind-blowing and inviting and intriguing to me that I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this. So sure enough, everyone prepared themselves, again on our mattresses in the room. And the facilitators came around one by one and offered the medicine to each individual. They let us know that as we took it, we should prepare ourselves on the middle of our mattress so that as soon as you take it, you will be able to lie down because it will work instantly. And it's something that you inhale through being lit, and then you take an inhalation of it. That being said, I was one of the last ones to go, and I was watching as all these people were lying down and beginning their experience, and my empathic body was feeling everyone in the room, and I was getting so nervous. And nervous not only to have the experience, but nervous of, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And fear was creeping in, excitement was there, and there it was, my turn. So I exhaled all my air and inhaled this Bufo. And as I slowly laid down and exhaled, it began. So I'm going to insert my experience of Bufo that I recorded an hour after doing it, from the day that I did it, because I believe that is going to be a more accurate version of what I can share with you now 3 months later. So for those of you listening, you'll just hear a change in the voice. Those of you watching, you'll just have an image come up on the screen and my voice sharing this experience, and I will be back in a moment. How to put into words something that is unexplainable, something that is otherworldly, that sits in the dimensions of space, time, sound, and light. My experience with Bufo was that of entering on the cuffs of my fear and almost pulling out, my body trembling, anticipation massive. I was one of the second to the last to give in it. And then dropping back onto my pillow and feeling the sounds of the room. And it went from the sounds of the room to the sounds of like dimensions. And then the light that was coming into the room also became dimensions, like fields, waves. And I was in the middle of it. witnessing it, until the point where the saliva gurgled up, a few sounds came out. And once I opened up my channel of vocalization, I went on an absolute roller coaster ride of sound, energy, vibration moving through me, my body, moving with the sound, becoming the sound. It was almost as though it was communication from some other dimension, some other language. And I went through an array of different types of communications, connections, vibrations, frequencies. The pinnacle of the experience, and as I was listening, because there was a level of consciousness, of a very distant consciousness, of observing myself having the experience, there was languages that sounded like animal, dolphin, otherworldly, tribal, American Indian, insect, a conglomeration of phases of sounds that all reverberated through my body and expressed itself through my vocal cords and my physical expression. The pinnacle, as I said, was arriving at somehow a rapid combustion of all the sounds, and then a release, which was in essence me being born. I remember curling up into a fetal position on my back, and I felt like my mouth was so wide open with the wailing that came out of me, the deep, deep cry, and the remembering of my birth and my entrance into this 3D world. It was as if the preliminary aspects of it were me in the vibration of sound and light, in preparation to come into the physical form. And then the wailing, the crying, the awe, the purity, the fragility, the love. And as I somewhat gave birth to myself, holding myself in my hands, not in a physical or visual form, but in an energetic form of feeling myself arriving. I then went into pain. So from the wailing and the crying, I calmed down. There was someone near that was hushing and calming me and soothing me. And then I went into pain. And then I just cried and cried. Not the wailing of coming in, but the crying of forgetting who I am and what I was before I came into the physical. I don't really recall precisely what came next, but I dropped into some moments of ebbs and flows of calm, serenity, and then picking up the frequencies of other people again. There were other languages being spoken through other people in the room, which sounded one kind of Asian and one kind of American Indian. And then I began to communicate again in a different sound. The entire time there was music playing and some gentle live instruments, there was always an aspect of the music somewhat dictating what was moving through me sound-wise, like I was communicating with the music that was opening something up in me in order to access this language, light, vibration, frequency, all of the above. It went on. I became also more physical. I got up from my back and was on kind of a child's pose and moving around. Then it became very like animal. I felt for a moment as I surrendered in like a frog position that I was a frog, and then I became like a tiger and was growling and hissing and stretching my limbs. And I remember a music that was very ethereal, and I felt right away I dropped into like spreading my wings like a bird and flying somehow. And so these like crescendos and these dips into the serene moments were constantly happening. And all the while, the peak of it was definitely the birth, where I was completely not in my body, but aware of what was happening. And then slowly, gently, I felt like my consciousness was being pulled back into my body as opposed to it being like 3 feet away watching myself. I didn't want to go back in to the physical, and the mental, the analytical was like as soon as my consciousness was allowed to enter my body, I would start to go analytical. So I was keeping it at a distance. I didn't want to come back. So I was soothing myself and reconnecting physically, and more things very gently were moving through and coming through, vibrations in my body, sounds, not at all as they were when they started, but toning down. Until the last chapter was lying on my stomach and kind of a very dissolved position, covered in my hair and feeling the room shifting, some people starting to communicate, and or my awareness was now really back in my body, and I kind of slowly came up into like a seated position with my legs stretched out and slouched over just to stay inside. I really didn't want to make eye contact or communicate with anyone, and just stay in this place, and wrapped a blanket around myself and hung out there for a while, and then slowly rolled onto my side and curled up into a ball. And when I finally came out, there were only like 3 people left in the room. They had made an announcement that it was time for lunch, and I didn't really want to, again, communicate with anybody. So I stayed there for a while lying, and eventually got up, and a young lady who I've had a connection with and really lovely vibration with was near, and we just looked at each other and I just started crying. I just had no words, and they asked me how I was doing, and like I just couldn't say anything. She came over and we embraced, and the biggest thing that I felt from her was her heart pounding in her chest, and this vibration of her heart and her connection. She also had not done the journey, but she'd done it in the past, and had shared with me when my first day that she had a very profound experience with it. So we sat very gently and slowly and began to share a little, still in awe, still in feeling that I was given one of the biggest gifts I could have ever received. This being reborn and feeling what it was that I came from, what it is that I have already started to tap into at a very kindergarten level with sound and movement and light. And I suppose
in retrospect now, walking through the forest and feeling myself, it feels like disappointing to be in my physical body because I can't even begin with these human words to describe something that's in a linear communication to something that's multidimensional. All I can say is it was earth-shattering, life-changing, deeply profound, and the biggest gift I've ever received. What I do with it from here, I know that my higher self knows. I can feel it. I'll let my brain work that out later once it comes to me. But thank you, guidance, whoever, whatever, universal consciousness, for showing me the way to deeper, deeper, deeper understanding. Oh yeah, courageous Lara here. One more adventure of peeling the layers of remembering who I am. May each human being be so bold and adventurous to dive into these realms, to really get a sense of how infinitely small we are and how infinitely big and large and massive and infinitely, infinitely big we come from, where there is no limits. Everything is possible. On that, this is Courageous Lara, over and out. Goodbye.
And there you have it. My experience with Bufo. This life-changing experience that opened up what I can only understand now as parts of myself that have always been there lying dormant. Parts of myself that were, I would say, my true power, my true essence. It was somehow otherworldly. It was somehow alien, intergalactic, and not of this dimension. And that in itself was the teacher, to show us the limitlessness of our being, of my potential. Of course, each person in the room that day had an individual experience. Some of them it was painful, some of them it was more still, and mine was as it was, as you just listened. So taking this now, this amazing morning of Kambo and detoxing, this incredible insight to another dimension of what I believe we're all a part of, the language of light and sound merged as one in consciousness. And now arriving to my second evening of ayahuasca. I was very excited about my second evening after what I had just experienced in 24 hours was so profound and gave me so much insight. I thought, okay, this is going to be wow. I remember I had the vegetarian dinner that they offered. I went upstairs to lie down, have a little meditation and relax before heading down to the gathering room to start the evening event and to prepare my intentions for the night. There was a lot swimming around and through me in reflection. I felt like there was an uprooting of plaque and gunk at the bottom of a swamp that got lifted. And I was just kind of being an observer of what all that was and just feeling it. And as I went down to the room and began the evening, I was back in the reflection of the morning around my relationship with my anger and how so much of my life I have suppressed and held down deep feelings of anger. And as I went into the ayahuasca, I took that as my reflection of what I wanted to work on. And sure enough, I did my first dose. I started to have a really weird upset stomach, gurgling, cramping, gas. And I went up for my second dose and I felt uncomfortable. I wanted to I couldn't sit still. I was shifting, moving, changing positions. Again, I opened my eyes a few times and looked at other people, and they were lying like little angels still on their back and receiving this medicine. And me, I just couldn't sit still. I was shifting and squirming and changing my positions to try and move the cramps in my gut out of me. So starting from right under my solar plexus all the way down to my pelvic bone, all my organs were working and gurgling and shifting and spewing and wrenching and cramping and gassing. And you would have thought that I ate a big bowl of chili. But nope, that wasn't it. And in amongst the physical cramping, as I recognized that it was a part of the energy that was trying to move out of me, it was the uprooting of this plaque and this old, stuck on belief systems and patterns that were in my energetic body and literally in the physiology of my body and the psychophysiological grips that it has had on me over the years. And I began down pathways in my mind while moaning, coming up into like cobra position, arching. I was just trying to, like, every time I get a deep cramp, I would just try to sound it out as opposed to purging. Some people were purging in the room. I just tried to like connect with what I was feeling in my body physically, what it was tapping into my mind mentally. So there was always a narrative that was coming up: anger about my father, anger about my relationship, anger about my brother, anger about this. It was all related to suppressed, repressed anger, resentments, frustration, whatever it was that was connected to it, it was coming up. So I was sounding it, moving it, moaning it, groaning it out of my body. It was most certainly very far from the dance party, love relationship with the wall, the melting of my paradigms into a liberated imagination. This was like I was going into the armpit of my psyche and my subconscious mind and down literally into the physiological memory of my body and how it had held on for so long, all of this gunk that was not mine and that was mine. That was mine, that I created out of not allowing myself to feel angry. I am a feeler. I am an empath. But what have I done most of my life when I'm around the vibration of violence, anger, confrontation? I shut down. I freeze like a deer in front of the headlights. I spiritualize that which I'm feeling. I try to move it through maybe the solar plexus and up, as opposed to feeling it down in my gut. And now tonight, this night, I was getting to feel it all in my gut. Everything that I had said no to, everything that I tried to transmute, to dissolve, to rationalize, to harmonize, to codependently take and shift into something other than what it was. And there I was at the end of the night, just exhausted. I had been sweating, crying, wailing, moaning, groaning, moving. I did actually tune into sound like, somewhat like what the Bufo had done to me. It had given me so much sound facility to access that as I went into areas where it was like, oh, it's over in my spleen, oh, it's in my upper intestine, where the pain was, I was able to kind of like hone into the pain and find a sound for it and then express it and like get it out. And sounds were coming out of me that I've never heard, nor have I ever made. And not just moaning of pain, but like really tuning into the expression of what I was getting out of my physical body from this discomfort and this medicine doing its work on myself. And as soon as the guide said, well, it's now the end of the evening. For those of you that are ready, you can go back to your room or you can stay the night and sleep here. It's up to you. Well, the night before, it was like a good hour before I even considered getting up and leaving. And this time I just couldn't wait to get up and go to my room and go to sleep and get this night over with. So that's what I did. I packed up my blanket and pillow and went straight up to my room and went to sleep in this very distorted, disconnected, fragmented peace and self that I was feeling. The next morning, I was one of the first ones to come down and do Kambo again. I will share the Kambo experience of the next morning on the next episode. Actually, I'm going to share it now because it is very pertinent to what I lived. So the Kambo experience of now my third morning after my second night of ayahuasca, I decided to do 4 spots. So I'd had 3 the night before and I did another 4. And again, deeply powerful. The heat, the pain and sweats. And when it shifted from the heat under the surface of my skin into the area where I knew it was going to go into the pain body, it went right down into my gut, right where it all had been working of the night before. And I had a wail come out of me that was like Tarzan in the jungle. It was the deepest wail. And through that, I then had a lot of visions. I went into body undulation, shakes throughout the body, sounding came out, crying, etc. And found myself as I shifted into this, as I call it, the third part, which was kind of what I had experienced the day before as being euphoria. Instead of this kind of elation and euphoria, I had a very clear 3 visions that popped up, which I then later drew. I went and drew them out because they were very profound and very, very clear of what I saw. I came out of this, out of the visions. I was like super, super powered up, and it was almost like someone just had unplugged me from the wall, and I collapsed and almost fell out of the chair. They brought me over onto a mattress, and I laid down and allowed myself to process what had just happened. And then slowly I took my notepad and drew out the images that I saw. And this shift of my, I would say, of my awakening into this new chapter of me, because it was a place of me releasing my old anger, my father's anger, and all the anger of other people that I took on because I was trying to take on the energy in order to transmute it and shift it and change it. So as opposed to allowing somebody to really live the fullest expression and get to the bottom of what is going on, in my way, I was trying to spiritualize it and say, no, I don't accept anger. I don't want anger. Anger's not good. Anger's a bad thing. So I was constantly numbing out to that emotion. And here I was after this whole day of getting in touch with this really powerful sense and experience. And when we came back that next morning for the I'm going to stop there because I want to share more about the integration on the next day. So I'm going to stop there because I would like to share the integration process with you in connection to my third night of ayahuasca. My reflection at this point, being now 3 months later, I am still digging up the crevices and the roots of my anger, and what I have what I have learned is that the fullest expression of ourself is a rainbow of colors. It's not just the pretty colors. It's not just the higher vibrations. There is also primal aspects of ourself and shadow. And as I started this video talking about the light and the shadow of my father and the areas in which I didn't want to accept in myself, was finally recognizing that there was so much that had been rooted in me that was lying dormant, that was waiting like a volcanic eruption to blow. And I now was giving it a safe space for it to express itself. I was conjuring up the psychosomatic, the physiological, cellular attachments that have gone into my body, my energy body, and have debilitated me, have made me passive aggressive, because that's the only way I've ever known how to show my anger is through passive aggressivity. I've never been able to confront, to say things directly, to stop someone in their tracks when they're being demeaning or mean or disrespectful. I would shut down, don't want the conflict, don't want to express my anger. And now all this anger was starting to come to the surface. I was like, okay, here we go. And it was subtle, at least through my second day and into the second night. It was subtle in the way of how I was feeling it and processing it, because it was, I'm certain, a huge upheaval to my body to feel all these feelings and process my psyche and my subconscious mind. And you're not getting a lot of sleep, and you're pretty much turning everything upside down, like taking yourself upside down and shaking all the coins out of your pocket that have been way down deep with all the lint and the dust. And that's what I was doing, really shaking things up. So, yeah, part 2 of my ayahuasca journey was the revelations of the shadow, my dark side, getting in touch with my anger, releasing my anger to a certain degree, at least the very first tips of it, and embracing it, encompassing and embodying this aspect of myself that is my true power. It is the energy of the volcano, because what is the volcano? The volcano is creation itself. Right now, I'm sitting on the island of Honolulu, Hawaii, Oahu, Hawaii, in Honolulu, which is a volcano that had to erupt and disrupt and tear down and burn and crack open. That image of a volcano erupting, that anger, that source of our life force energy that can come out really ugly. But if it's done in a healthy and supportive way, it can truly be the birth of new creation. And I do feel that that is truly what is happening with me over the course of this last year, as a lot has been erupting in my psyche, in my being, in the birth of even this podcast itself. And for me to courageously hold these aspects of myself as life, as bliss, as the biggest gifts that we all have, is to be in touch with what we're really, really feeling. And sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes it's rage. Sometimes it's judgment and hate. And yeah, that's toxic for sure. It can be toxic if you hold on to it. But to deny yourself the possibility to feel those things is denying yourself that you're human, is denying yourself is that you actually can feel. I am an empath. I've always been an empath, and I grew up in a dysfunctional, abusive household. And I spiritualized myself, spiritualized my way through those environments of dysfunction, of passive aggressive, total aggressive, to codependent. And here I am, decades later, recognizing how I did myself a disservice to do that. Yes, it was my survival instinct. Yes, it is our survival instinct to spiritually bypass, to to use toxic positivity to try to remorph your life into something that is happy and joyful and I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, and just like mantra your way out of it. But you can't do that by deny what actually is inside you. You have to give yourself a safe space to feel. We are feeling beings. We are so powerful when we can really feel. And courageously going where you have never been before inside yourself is one of the scariest things I think any of us can do. To truly face our anger, to face rage in in the flesh and the body and the spirit and the emotion, and go there to really allow yourself to like tap into that and know where it comes from. Know that a lot of it is not even yours, that you took it on, especially those that are empaths, that are light workers. I had a sense that I came into this world to take on the suffering and the pain of others. And I've recognized that I didn't need to hold on to it for life. I just needed to transmute it, dissolve it. To feel the compassion for another doesn't mean to take on their pain. It just means to resonate and understand and hold empathy that this person is in suffering. And that, wow, I know what that feels like. And to understand their suffering. That's compassion. So, my lesson in my second night of ayahuasca, a day of Bufo, and showing my ultimate possibilities and seeing the light and feeling the light and sound move through me in a way that words will never be able to describe. I felt like I was able to meet my highest of highs and my lowest of lows inside me in one day. And that's pretty profound and exhausting. Anyway, my ayahuasca journey, part 2, I hope you've enjoyed this. I look forward to share with you my part 3 and my final day of this amazing retreat, and a little bit of the tail end of what the last 3 months has brought me in my own revelations and growth and understanding of being human right here and now in these ever-changing, ever-transformative moments that we're living on Earth. Because I don't know about you, but I can feel all around us the shadow is emerging. And deep inside the shadow is the true power. Deep inside the shadow and that dualistic mindset of good and evil and dark and light, or shadow and light, is something that we have never expected. It is the true power of humanity. It is the birth of the new creation of what we can be. It is our potential. Using your light to go into your shadow is one of the biggest gifts that you can give yourself. I'm still on it. I'm still humbly a student of this journey. And I hope that my journey is helping you to feel more inspired, to continue to do the work. Don't give up. Have faith, have courage to hold love in your heart, to have love for this process and this journey, even as uncomfortable as it is sometimes. We're in this together. Beautiful, beautiful people. Thank you for coming here to listen, to watch. This is Lara Helena, Courageous Lara, signing out on Courageous Love Now. Over and out. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can also find me on YouTube at Harmonize, the number 2, the word 1. You can also find me on social media at Courageous Love Now on Instagram. You can find me at Harmonize21 on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I look forward to share more with you on these courageous days and nights that we are living on this earthly filter of consciousness. My heart goes out to all of you to be brave as we pass through some of the darkest hours of this planet, and to trust that love conquers all. You got this. Courageous Lara, over and out.
Courageous love now. Courageous love now. Courageous love now.